We are at Texas Treefort Studios, close to Lake Travis, somewhere mysteriously hard to find in the hill country outside of Austin. This is a recording studio owned by the great Jack Rock, also mysterious. Right now we're in the vocal booth, or what for me was the vocal booth. I assume it could be used for a lot of different things. But I sat in here and recorded all the scratch vocals and some of what became the lead vocals on the record too. And I don't know if you can catch any of this, but behind me is the driveway in the front of the house. You can see the car, one of many fast cars. And then the other direction, the one that I faced while I was recording, is the skyline of Austin through a bank of windows over there.
We're at the Texas Treefort right now outside of Austin, Texas, and this is where we've been working on the new Old 97s record, which I think is going to be called The Grand Theater. Jack has lovingly collected and then restored all these incredible vintage, preamps and pieces that I'd only, sort of read about, seen every now and then in studios, things like Fairchild compressors and that the Beatles used and stuff. So it's been a lot of fun for us. It's sort of like a working vintage gear museum.
The majority of these songs I wrote on a trip to England and Ireland and Scandinavia with Steve Earle. And I was there for 3.5 weeks, and I probably wrote 15 songs. So I was working at a crazy clip, and considering we were doing planes, trains, and automobiles every day, waking up and taking a bus to a train station to an airplane to another train, and I was on fire. I don't know what it was, but I wrote a ton of songs. And I got back and started playing them for the band, and I kept thinking we would whittle it down from the 23 or 4 that I had whittled it down to, and they just persisted and persisted. So now we're working with a 20-song list and trying to figure out how many are going to make the record and mix them all. And it's a lot. It's a good problem to have, but I hear them as this sort of weird. There's something epistolary about it. It's like they feel like letters home to me. I think we might call the record The Grand Theater, and I sort of see all these people that are writing these letters or appearing in them as being, characters in some strange theater production. And I think it has to do with some continuum that exists between London and Austin, or England and America, or something. The idea of that kind of came to me when I was arguing over the pronunciation of theater with Salim, the producer. And obviously we normally say theater over here in America. But in England, a lot of people say theater. And in Texas, I've noticed a lot of people say theater. So I started thinking about that as a microcosm of this whole thing, the similarity between us as people and sort of looking back across the timeline of my family, who they had all been in England and Ireland, and then they came over to Texas and spent the last 7 generations here, and really the differences, geographically speaking, are not as great as people think. We're all sort of one big weird tribe. So the songs to me kind of become this set that spans from England to here in the hill country outside of Austin. I'm still figuring out what the big picture is on this record. I know that it's a bunch of character studies, and I know that there's elements of autobiography, but that's, if you write a song, it's part of your life, so it's inherently autobiographical, by definition. But do I feel like the narrator in some of them? I don't know. Not more so than usual. I do think that I'm hiding behind or using characters a lot. So I do think that, to me, that it's David Foster Wallace had a book called Brief Interviews with Hideous Men, which was hard to read, and it was, the idea was that here were all these men sort of linked by this common hideousness. And so even though that book was not one of my favorite of his, just because of how tough a read it was, I did like the idea of just all these people talking, and what was their link. I'm still figuring out what their link is, but I think it has to do with, as usual, I think in my songs, love and its potential unattainability, or or its redemptive qualities. I was in Birmingham, England, playing a gig at the Grand Theatre, and there was an elevator. You load up in an elevator, and I was on the elevator up to the dressing room, and I was sort of laughing about how they pronounce it theater, and I thought, elevator, theater, there you go. You rarely get to use that rhyme.
Meet on the elevator in the Grand Theater. Yeah, I look you in the eye, say I'd like to see you later. Would you
There's a lot of stories on this record. There's a song called Please Hold On While the Train Is Moving that's you and I, Cindy, we were talking about this a minute ago about I end up traveling a lot. And I was on an airport train, and they always have the recorded voice that says, please hold on while the train is moving. And so that sort of became this mantra in my head all day long as I was traveling that day, and I was going from train to plane, back to train to car, and it sort of felt like, God, I guess if there's an autobiographical one in there, it's probably Please Hold On While the Train Is Moving. But it's this really like sort of psychedelic, repetitive sort of song. And Salim and I both kept thinking there has to be a break from this. It's it had like the feeling of a train just going and going and going, and we came up with the idea of writing a song that would just go in the middle of it and be a tiny little song encased in this bigger piece, and we wanted it to be different. And it went down to the day we were going to cut the song. I'd written 3 different pieces, the middle breaks that were more like traditional middle breaks. And then I came into him I had said I've got 2 songs, and one of them I think is a slam dunk, and the other one is just this germ of an idea. Well, of course, the song that he liked as the sort of centerpiece in Please Hold On While the Train Is Moving was the one that only had 1 line of lyrics to it, which was, I'm rolling around on the runway. So it went from being a song where it was very chugging to a song that was suddenly in the middle of this thing, kind of sounded like a T-Rex song. I'm rolling around on the runway, I'm wondering if this thing is gonna fly. So it was really sweet to have this huge, propulsive, crazy freight train all of a sudden get derailed for a full minute and a half, and go into this other thing. It's this kind of love song. It's about a guy who's coming home, and then it goes back onto the train, and that sort of feels like my life. The Old 97s, we're on our 8th record, and so we've done a lot of stuff. Of all the list of things that we've always wanted to try from our favorite bands, we've done a lot of them, and the guys have rejected a lot of other attempts to sort of push out into different styles, and rightfully so. The 97s are something of a machine, so you got to sort of respect the limitations thereof. But we found out that we didn't have as many limitations on this record by virtue of these songs that I didn't think would work found a way to work. There's a song called You Are No Simple Machine, and when I brought it in, it was kind of a waltz, like a pretty traditional country thing. And it became like a Rolling Stones thing. So when I wrote it, it was, he said, can I buy you a drink? What he meant was, can I buy you? Yeah, his eyes were, in the original, his eyes were as black as coal, but his accent recalled the bayou. And it was fine, it was alright. It wasn't anything that was gonna open up any brand new doors for the Old 97s or get us too excited while we were cutting. We could have done it, but it probably would have wound up being at least, or at best, filler, and more likely, cutting room floor. And then we just said, well, let's try a different approach. And it wound up being like the real Stones. He said, can I buy you a drink? What he meant was, can I buy you? Yeah, his eyes were pits of despair, but his accent recalled the bayou. Women go crazy for guys who talk funny and men who treat them mean. You it's kind of fun. It wound up being this very different thing that was a little more snarling and weird. And I changed the lyrics up to reflect it more, which that was something that happened throughout.